Hello, and welcome again, dear Tarnished. Let us take a walk through the lands between tonight. The rain is falling hard across the fields, making this a good time to share a few hidden secrets. We will step into the dark corners of our history. These are truths no priest of the Erd Tree will ever teach you. You have to find the clues yourself, carved into rusted armor or slipping from the mouths of broken men. When you put these scattered pieces together, the picture becomes deeply unsettling. The deeper you dig, the uglier things get. Our journey starts with flesh and bone. We will examine what happens when someone reaches for absolute power. When a person chases ambition and ignores the cost, they always pay a terrible price. That toll is collected directly from their own body. Think back to Sorceress Selene. You stood by her side and fought hard to help her take back the Academy of Raya Lucaria. She finally claimed the center of the Grand Library. She swore her loyalty to your future rule as Elden Lord. She showed deep gratitude and told you to visit her again soon. You leave her standing there in victory. You sit by a fire of grace to rest your tired bones. Then you walk back up those stone steps into the library. You scan the floor and look closely at the shadows in the corner. A giant sphere of carved stone rests against the bookshelves. This mass is made of oversized glintstone crowns and human masks warped out of shape. Step closer to the structure. You will hear a groan filled with pain slipping from the cracks in the rock. That thing is Selene. Selene spent her whole life hunting the primeval current. The Academy masters kicked her out years ago because she kept studying this forbidden magic. She gave up her safety to find this hidden knowledge. Eventually, the magic ate her alive. The old practice she brought back to the Academy is brutal. It requires rounding up living scholars. The caster takes these mages and melts their bodies together into a single entity. The scholars call this creation a seed of stars. Long ago, Selene forced this fate on her own peers. People learned about her crimes and named her the Graven Witch. The royals drove her out of Raya Lucaria for treating human life like raw clay. Now skip forward to her moment of victory. She stood alone at the peak of the Academy. She grabbed hold of the primeval current with her bare hands. The magic instantly changed her. She transformed into the monster she used to build out of other people. Find a graven school talisman and read the markings on its surface. The artifact tells us how these rogue mages think. For people who chase the primeval current, smashing living bodies into star seeds is just a normal science experiment. It is a basic tool for research. Selene held this belief close to her heart. She trusted the process. She defended her actions until her own mind broke apart and she could no longer think. She has no mouth left to form words. Selene can only cry out if you brush your hand against the cold stone. Think about the woman who took you in and taught you your first real spells. She called you her apprentice with a tone sounding like warm affection. Now her future is gone. She will rot away as a pile of suffering masks, trapped forever in the shadows of the exact room where she claimed her greatest victory. Long before her final change into a sphere of stone faces, Selin pulled off a strange trick. She committed an act against her own flesh. She carved her consciousness out of her head and placed her soul inside a primal glintstone. This glowing gem serves as a safe container for a sorcerer's mind. Holding her essence inside the stone gave her a strange kind of freedom. When you first meet her hiding in Waypoint Ruins, you are speaking to an astral illusion. You talk to a magical projection she cast to communicate. Her actual skin and bones sit miles away. If you travel to Witchbane Ruins, you will find her true body. The Academy chained her original form to a wall down there. Her old teachers left her to starve as a harsh punishment. They wanted her to rot slowly in a damp cell. Even the darkest scholars of Raya Lucaria find this tactic disgusting. Leaving your flesh in a dungeon while casting your mind across the map crosses a line most magicians refuse to approach. Selin lived as a phantom. For countless days, she spoke through an illusion cut off from her own blood. Her mind remained awake, yet she stood removed from her native skin. The strangest part of this situation is her attitude. You might expect a prisoner trapped in a damp cell to scream for release. Selin does none of that. Her projection welcomes you into her room. She teaches you magic with a warm voice. Finding her at peace makes the encounter unsettling. She learned to exist inside a nightmare. Her calm smile proves a hard truth. A person can adapt to anything. Before sorceress Selin faced her punishment, an older group of rogue scholars invented the spell that eventually ruined her. These primeval sorcerers wanted to grasp the deepest magic of the sky. They decided normal reading was useless for their goals. Their solution involved gathering younger students. The masters dragged these scholars down into the cold cellars. There, they forced living bodies to melt and merge into a tight sphere. The founders of this dark sect proudly called these round masses seeds of stars. You can find these floating clusters hidden throughout the academy. Look closely at the surface. You will spot the glintstone masks worn by different classroom factions. You might assume builders carved these monuments from regular clay. That assumption is false. Those spheres consist of human beings. Dozens of bright individuals remain squeezed tightly together. They share a single shape, and their minds stay partially awake. They float above the floorboards, suffering constantly in a permanent state of transformation. These rogue scholars believed this violence was a standard way to conduct research. This brutal tradition only went underground the day Queen Renala claimed control of the academy. She banned the practice entirely. Her strict command held strong until until Selene opened the forbidden books. Selene ambushed her peers and crushed them into those same round shapes, earning the title of Graven Witch. Now, whenever you find a floating ball of weeping faces, you understand what happened. You are looking at the result of ambition. A scholar decided their own friends were nothing more than fuel for higher learning. When you approach Renala, Queen of the Full Moon, she floats high above the library floor. She refuses to let go of a massive egg made of amber. She holds the object tight against her chest at all times. Lord Rodigan handed her this golden prize a long time ago. He gave it to her right before he packed his things and marched away to marry Queen Marika. Renala lost her mind the day her husband vanished. Now, she spends her long years offering the gift of rebirth. She uses the warm amber to strip away your old skin. She molds your bones and reshapes your flesh from the inside out. Most travelers only see a glowing rock. If you peer past the layers of hardened sap, you realize the egg acts as a vessel for godhood. The amber holds the great rune of the unborn. Renala pulls magic from this divine fragment, treating the gem like a living organ. She forces the juvenile scholars you see sliding across the floor to undergo a constant, twisted remaking. She molds their bodies externally, watches them lose their minds, and repeats the cycle endlessly. She pours all her motherly care into a broken breeding ground. The saddest part is knowing Rodigan handed her this tool right before breaking her heart. Walk right up to the queen and stare at the surface of her prize. You can easily spot thick veins of blood stretching across the gold. The cloudy resin naturally hides the raw power pulsing from the great rune. The surviving masters of the academy refuse to look directly at the egg. They know the pulsing veins on the outside are sickening enough, and the unnatural rebirth it offers remains a sight no sane person should ever witness. Let us look closer at the students crowding the floor of the Grand Library. These pale figures crawling over the rugs belong to the Queen of the Full Moon. Renala claims them as her children. She pulls them into the magic of the amber egg, watches them expire, and brings them back again. They are trapped inside a constant loop of birth and death. Examine the large caps resting on their heads, and you will find a truth recorded by the Academy. Their rebirth is like sleep, and each time they wake, another piece of memory is lost. A bright mage might forget his own name during the first cycle. 10 cycles later, he forgets how to form a sentence. The constant repetition scrapes their identities clean, and they grow less human with every resurrection. They cannot survive outside the library walls, and the rebirth process is slowly wiping away their history. They lack the strength to stand upright, dragging themselves across the stone by their arms. While they crawl, they sing a soft lullaby about being bound safe in their mother's amber, their voices pitched high and sweet like toddlers in a nursery. When you finally breach the library to to face the queen of the full moon, the room turns into a storm of magic. Bookcases shatter, flames fill the air, and crystal fixtures crash from the ceiling. Beneath that chaos, the students keep singing that same gentle tune as they crawl forward to throw fire and hurl books at your head. Fear does not drive their performance. Their thin voices carry true warmth and deep loyalty, and they gladly throw away their frail lives to protect her, singing softly the entire time. The clash is sickening, mangled bodies forced to fight, set to the innocent sound of a nursery rhyme. The saddest part of their existence is their reliance on the magic. They are addicted to the process. The endless remaking ruined their original bodies. If the queen stopped the ritual, their physical forms would fall apart. They need the amber egg just to keep their skin held together. Queen Renala sits in the center of this slow destruction and sees no harm at all. A broken heart blinds her to the pain she causes. Lord Rodigan walked away and broke her mind, and she folded inward to hide from the pain. She looks down at these fading shapes and calls them her sweetings, her voice carrying deep maternal love. She believes she is raising a happy family, sheltering her precious flock from a cruel world outside the library doors. She is blind to the fact that the beings on the floor stopped being true scholars a long time ago. When you walk the cold grounds of Carrion Manor, you often cross blades with twitching constructs. Marionette soldiers with too many arms swing cold steel at your neck the moment they spot you. Ghostly trolls and spectral knights manifest from thin air. Long ago, these forces served a higher calling. They stood as guards for the royal Carrion bloodline, protecting the estate before the Academy's grand rebellion. Then Queen Renala lost her husband. The departure broke her heart and shattered her mind. Sensing her weakness, the Academy scholars rose up in rebellion. They locked the weeping queen inside the great library and threw away the key. This betrayal left the Carrion guards adrift. Their queen could no longer issue commands. The royal family collapsed. Instead of laying down their weapons, the remaining constructs and ghosts kept doing their old jobs. They patrol the rainy courtyards and defend the locked doors of an empty house. Stripping away their magical bindings means accepting a harsh reality. Their kingdom is dead. They attack strangers out of habit. Their aggression is the last remaining spark of a useless loyalty to a family that no longer exists. When you visit Queen Renala to reshape your flesh, she demands a specific price. You place a larval tear into her hands to begin the ritual. Most travelers view this object as a simple stone or a piece of magic. The old texts reveal a harsher truth. You are paying the queen with a living thing. The item you carry is the core of a silver tear. It acts as a fluid material, yet it also functions as a biological body. If you walk the damp streets of Nokron and Nixtella, you will find these creatures slithering across the masonry. They are alive. They react to your approach and defend their territory. They possess a startling ability to copy your exact shape. Remember the time you fought one in those lower caverns, watching it forge a perfect mirror of your own face and armor. The beast understood your form. These beings hold a real awareness. To achieve your rebirth, you must slaughter one of them. You have to cut through its liquid skin and rip out the center, keeping it alive. That silver heart becomes the fuel Renala requires. She uses the extracted remains of a murdered creature to mold your limbs anew. Every time you choose to change your given talents, you leave a corpse behind. You finance your fresh start by hunting down beings that merely wanted to survive the dark. They crawled quietly through a buried city, abandoned by the greater will. They endured the fall of their old masters, only to meet their end by your hand. You steal their life away to adjust your own path. Preceptor Seluvis lives in a tall stone tower behind Caria Manor. When you first speak to him, he acts proud. He speaks down to everyone who crosses his path. Still, he works for Lunar Princess Ranni, and he holds valuable knowledge about magic. You tolerate his rude behavior because he helps your journey. He appears to be a grumpy scholar. However, he hides a dark obsession safely out of sight. Walk a short distance from his tower, and you will find a ruined foundation. Strike the ground there, and a hidden stairway appears out of thin air. Walk down the steps into a cold basement. You will discover several figures standing in the shadows. They wear armor and simple clothes. They hold their arms and legs at odd angles. Their faces look blank. A message sits near the wall warning you not to touch Seluvis's puppets. These figures never blink. You might mistake them for statues at first glance. The truth is much worse. These are real people. They used to be traveling warriors before they met the preceptor. Seluvis takes living humans and feeds them a bright liquid. He crafts this drink by crushing shards of fallen starlight. The potion wipes the victim clean of their personal desires. They keep just enough awareness to stand upright, yet their own will vanishes. They become hollow. Seluvis poses them however he likes, and they remain stuck that way forever. When you discover his underground prison, he shows no shame. He behaves like a rich merchant welcoming a guest. He casually offers you one of the warriors as a gift. He hands over a stolen life as a sign of hospitality. Over time, you learn why he spends so many hours on these mixtures. He views this collection of bodies as mere practice. He aims to boil a much stronger cup of poison. His ultimate target is Lunar Princess Ranni. He openly bows to her in public, yet he secretly schemes to break her mind. He wants to betray the royal family, steal the princess, and drag a demigod down into his basement to join his silent crowd. Preceptor Seluvis acts like a king inside his lonely tower. He treats everyone around him with bitter contempt. He forces dark potions down the throats of brave warriors, turning living people into motionless toys. He stores these tragic figures in a hidden basement, treating them like a personal collection of dolls. His towering arrogance makes his final moments strange. When his time finally runs out, his body slumps forward on his knees. His arms hang loose, and his head tilts down toward the floor. If you visit his underground storage room, you will recognize that posture immediately. He rests in the resting position of a discarded dummy. To understand this mystery, we must look closely at a different man. An old caretaker named Pydia cowers on a balcony nearby. Pay close attention to how these two men speak. They share the same strange rhythms in their breath. A careful ear catches the servant's tone hiding beneath the wizard's arrogant demands. This observation leads to a chilling conclusion. The great preceptor held no real power. The servant pulled the strings the entire time. Pydia hid in the shadows and used a magical shell to carry out his sick hobbies. Seluvis spent years stealing the free will of others, blind to his own hollow nature. He gathered victims for a master he could never perceive. The illusion shatters when Princess Rani's magic shifts. Seluvis drops dead on his floor. At that exact moment, across the manor grounds, Pydia meets a violent end. Grief did not kill the operator. Without the magic protecting him, Pydia's own collection of marionette puppets gained their freedom. If you stand nearby, you hear Pydia screaming that he loved them as they finally turn their blades on their master. The puppeteer is hacked to pieces by his own toys, proving what happens when you treat lives like objects. You can spot large constructs rolling across Raya Lucaria and the paths of Volcano Manor. Travelers call these statues abductor virgins. Their purpose requires no deep study to figure out. The machines swing their iron doors open, snatch a living target, and snap shut. If one catches you in battle, the tight space crushes you. These devices were built for cruelty. During his time as the head of the Inquisition, Praetor Rykard needed a tool to hunt down enemies of the Erdtree. He deployed the abductors to kidnap anyone accused of turning against the faith. Once the metal arms grabbed a heretic, the statue carried them straight to Mount Gilmere. The captives stepped out of the bellies and went directly into Rykard's torture rooms for processing. These machines were never designed for safe travel. Notice how they roll forward on spinning blades. Up inside the manor, you will eventually meet Inquisitor Giza. He wields a wheel covered in those same blades. The creators took an instrument meant for ripping flesh and attached an iron stomach. Deep inside the academy, a lone machine waits by a water wheel. If you let it swallow you, you wake up tossed onto the rocky, fiery shores of Volcano Manor. This sudden journey is no mistake of magic. You activated an old kidnapping route. The transport system still works as the torturers intended. You merely survived the agonizing trip because you are much stronger than the doomed heretics who traveled that dark path before you. Deep beneath Volcano Manor, a vast cavern sits flooded with boiling rock. A giant beast waits down there in the intense heat. When you finally confront the god-devouring serpent, you see flying magma and hear a booming voice. That voice sounds happy to shed blood. Most travelers assume the monster captured Praetor Rykard and stole his mind by force. The actual history goes in a different direction. Rykard walked into those jaws on purpose. He fed his own flesh to the beast without a single regret. To him, this surrender was a calculated statement. He despised the Golden Order. He decided the best way to insult Queen Marika, and her laws was to bond his soul with a creature capable of eating divine beings. The serpent swallowed him whole, and the two minds melted together. Their identities share one form today. When the beast opens its mouth, you hear Rykard speaking through the scales. His tone is slow and highly amused. He looks down at you and casually invites you to share in his feast. He refers to this bloody process as becoming kin. Praetor Rykard believed that chewing on human flesh was an act of extreme love. Every proud champion who walked into Volcano Manor listened to Lady Tanith's honeyed words and willingly fed themselves to the serpent, granted him extra strength and decades of extended life. He frames this brutal slaughter as a beautiful family reunion. However, the magic he commands tells a darker story. The sorcery known as Rykard's Rancor summons flaming skulls representing the trapped spirits of his followers, and reveals that the souls of his eaten champions remain awake inside his gut, crying out continuously in torment. Being swallowed by the Lord of Volcano Manor brings endless pain, far removed from the warm embrace he promises. Just look around the cavern floor while you fight. The ground is littered with the bones of warriors who accepted his offer, and you will step over towering pillars made of rotting bodies, monuments to his endless hunger. Rykard honestly believes he is growing a unified family. He decided the best way to kill gods was to turn his own body into a stomach, built out of the loyal friends who followed him down into the dark. Anyone standing in that cavern can plainly see a reeking graveyard. Volcano Manor serves as a gathering place for proud warriors, but behind its closed doors, the fortress hides a foul biological horror. You will see the results walking the stone corridors and sliding across the cooled lava fields outside. The snake men guarding the property did not hatch from normal eggs in the wild. They are the horrific offspring of the Praetor himself. Hidden lore items, like the serpent's amnion, point to a deeply repulsive birthing ceremony. The snake men are the biological children of the god devouring serpent and human women, likely corrupted nobles like Didikar, who indulged in the manor's blasphemous pleasures. The exact steps of this bloody reproductive ritual remain kept in the dark, and we are lucky we cannot witness the process directly. The snake men roam the halls with freedom. They guard the manor willingly. They protect the praetor because they view him as a loving parent. He birthed them into existence. They bow their heads to him in sincere worship. When you walk into Mount Gilmere and draw your sword, you threaten their way of life. The creatures strike back with raw fury. You can understand why they fight so hard. You stepped into their home, and you are trying to slaughter the only god they have ever known. Walk down the pathways beneath Volcano Manor into the slopes of Mount Gilmere. There, you will find a settlement known as Prison Town. The streets might look like a regular village from afar. Stepping inside reveals a different reality. The area serves as a jail, operating as an open butcher shop designed for sadistic curiosity. Explore the empty squares. You will spot wooden frames bolted to the ground. Captive albinorics hang from these thick beams, unable to escape. Inside the surrounding buildings, human bodies lie strapped flat onto tables. Cutting tools sit arranged right beside them. If you walk near the local church, you will stumble across a metal rack covered in blood. A face covering rests nearby. Hold the albinoric mask in your hands, and you will realize someone carved it straight off a real victim's skull. The scattered bones and bloody knives tell a clear story. Praetor Rykard commanded his scholars to tie these prisoners down. The workers cut the captives open to study their anatomy, torturing the artificial life forms to extract coagulated blood for the manor's blasphemous rites. Meanwhile, the snake men patrol the streets all day long. They slide past the bound victims without a second glance. To the guards, this daily slaughter is normal. This atmosphere of butchery explains why a godskin noble waits in the Temple of Iglay. The pale aristocrat did not travel to Volcano Manor to work for Rykard. He traveled there because the two predators share the same bloody ambitions. The godskins hunt gods for their skin, and Rykard hunts gods for his stomach. They reached an unspoken agreement. They share the manor's grounds, reveling in a fortress built entirely around the act of shedding divine and mortal blood. When you ride through the misty swamps of Liurnia, you often spot the first generation of albinorics. Those frail figures move slowly. They look at you with quiet curiosity. However, if you step inside the prison town at Volcano Manor, you will meet a different group of these beings. You find them strapped tightly to thick wooden racks. Iron bolts hold them upright. Their captors took away their ability to walk and stripped away any remaining dignity. Look closely at the ones still possessing a head. Their pale skin stretches tight with pure panic. You do not need to hear them speak to understand their pain. The awkward angles of their broken limbs tell the whole story of their suffering. These prisoners lost far more than just the ability to move their legs. If you manage to smash their wooden cages apart, they do not thank you. They instantly lunge at your throat. They attack because they spent countless days locked in that room, learning that every person who walks through the door brings fresh agony. Nearby, you can pick up a severed albinoric face worn like a crude mask. Blood stains the nearby tables. The sturdy frames prove these captives hung there for a long time. Lord Rykard did not kill them quickly. He slowly took them apart piece by piece. He measured their reactions and recorded the results of his brutal butchery over many months. Our old histories claim these artificial beings hold no souls. The racks in the manor prove what happens when you carry that label. When the ruling class decides you lack a spirit, they also decide you deserve zero mercy. A missing soul gives a cruel king the excuse to treat you like a piece of raw meat on a butcher's block. When you finally strike down Praetor Rykard, his massive bulk collapses into the hot ash. The battle ends, but the story inside Volcano Manor is far from over. Walk back to the main drawing room, and you will see Lady Tanith's chair sitting empty. Travel back down into the cavern where you killed the serpent. You will discover the lady kneeling on the rocky floor right next to her dead lord. She is pulling thick pieces of meat from his ruined neck. She raises the raw flesh to her mouth and swallows it down. She refuses to speak. She ignores your footsteps and never stops chewing. Her loyal crucible knight, the armored warrior who guarded her throughout your stay at Volcano Manor, stands a few paces behind her, weapon ready, watching you closely. You can walk right up to the lady and listen to her sickening feast. But if you draw your blade and strike her, the knight will immediately charge to cut you down. He is there to ensure nobody interrupts her mourning. Tanith traveled to Mount Gilmere from a foreign shore long ago. She worked as a dancer until Rykard claimed her as his partner. She gladly took control of his bloody estate. For years, she sat by the hearth and convinced proud champions to hunt for glory. She recruited these brave warriors specifically to feed the giant snake. She did this because she fiercely loved the man hiding inside its belly. Since you destroyed her god, she resorts to a desperate plan. She wants to guarantee he survives. By eating his corpse, she acts as his new vessel. She carries his flesh safely inside her own body. You cannot ask her any questions. She offers no answers. Most folks would look at her stained lips and assume she lost her mind. However, her actions make perfect sense to her. She is demonstrating loyalty. Praetor Rykard taught her that eating another being creates a permanent bond. She is speaking the only language of affection they both understand. The lands between holds many romances. Tanith and Rykard share a loving connection. Sadly, staring directly at their devotion will easily make your stomach turn. The Crucible Knight standing guard over that desperate feast in a room reeking of burned scales, says something about Volcano Manor too. He anchors himself to the floor to ensure nobody harms the woman he serves, while she experiences the deepest, ugliest grief of her life. This armored sentinel perfectly represents the core philosophy of the manor. Everyone living in that mountain agreed that a lord's commands require no judgment. True devotion means accepting whatever ugly shape your master takes. He does not view Rykard as a monster. He is protecting Lady Tanith while she mourns a fallen king. Walk the high walls of Stormvale Castle, and you will eventually find a lone survivor. Her name is Rodrika. She speaks quietly about the soldiers who marched behind her. These loyal men sailed across the ocean to protect her. When they arrived on these shores, Godric's men captured them. Instead of giving them honorable deaths, the ruler ordered his surgeons to butcher them. Rodrika explains how her men had their arms severed and their legs sawed off. The Lord demanded all these pieces be taken and stuck to the spider. Rodrika speaks these words with a hollow tone. She stares straight ahead, numb. Her mind shut down to survive the survivor's guilt. When you confront Godric in the courtyard, you understand exactly what the young woman meant. The Lord is a moving mountain of stolen meat. You can look at his form and count the lives he ruined. Dozens of human arms sprout from his shoulders. Unmatched hands clench and twitch without his command. He drags this bulk across the cobblestones. He swings the stolen muscle to crush challengers. He stands before you as a living monument to butchery. Godric did not stop at his own flesh. You can find his early tests hiding in the dining halls of Stormvale. We call these pale creatures grafted scions. The castle surgeons took lesser scions of the golden bloodline and stitched multiple extra limbs to their torsos to build swift hunters. These beasts possess no memories. They only know how to serve the master who built them. They patrol the stone corridors to hunt down more raw materials. Look past the blood and axes. You will find a pathetic man. Godric behaves this way out of pure insecurity. Among all the demigods ruling the lands between, he sits at the bottom. He shares blood with the first Elden Lord, Godfrey. However, that connection is stretched incredibly thin. Instead of training his body, he takes a lazy path. He forcibly stitches the limbs of better warriors onto his own ribs. People call him a monster, and they are correct. Yet a bitter sadness surrounds his existence. The society of the Golden Order demands perfection. The rulers of the Erd Tree measure a person by their power. Godric grew up knowing he would never measure up to his golden family. This pressure broke his mind. He felt so empty that he chopped up the followers of other lords. He keeps piling on more arms, hoping the extra weight will finally make him feel worthy of a throne. The gap inside his soul remains wide open. No amount of stolen flesh will ever fix a shattered spirit. Stormvale Castle stands as the first massive fortress blocking your path. The The stone walls create a dark mood that most travelers accept as standard wartime scenery. You see dead soldiers hanging upside down from the high ledges. Corpses sit spiked onto wooden poles in the main courtyard. The guards arranged these dead bodies into humiliating poses instead of letting them fall on the wet cobblestones. Godric the Grafted commands Stormvale Castle, and paranoia controls his mind. He sits at the bottom of the royal family. He possesses tiny fractions of golden blood, and every knight in his army knows he is weak. His brain handles this insecurity by forcing everyone to look at extreme violence. He orders his men to hang the corpses high as a message. He wants approaching travelers, his own guards, and himself to see undeniable proof of his power. He personally curates the bloody displays. He acts like a frightened child building tall towers of skulls, desperately hoping the scary decorations will convince the world he is a giant. Deep underneath the courtyard of Stormvale Castle, a wooden root bursts through the stone floor. The wood carries the sickness of death blight, and a twisting tree spirit guards the area. Right near the edge of the root, a patch of dried blood stains the floor. These red marks usually show you the final moments of a fellow traveler. In this specific dark cave, the blood serves as a vital piece of history. Touch the stain, and a red phantom appears. The glowing man gets yanked into the air and pierced by the magic. This matches the attack of the rotting monsters hiding in the roots. Rugier, the friendly mage you meet in the chapel, walked down this dangerous path before you arrived. He found the twisted root. He reached out and touched the swollen face of Prince Godwyn growing in the wood beneath the castle. The sickness bit his hand and infected his blood. The red stain on the ground shows Rugier taking the blow that ultimately dooms him. He survives the immediate encounter, limping back to the safety of the Round Table hold. But the damage is permanent. The death blight takes his legs first, then slowly drains the rest of his life. You can stand in the dark and watch the exact moment he caught the disease. Rugier walked straight into the jaws of a sleeping beast to satisfy his curiosity. The dark secret he touched bit him hard and promised him a slow, painful end. Step inside the glowing heart of the Erdtree, and you finally meet Queen Marika. You might expect a ruler resting on a golden chair, or a proud leader standing tall to greet you. Instead, you find a woman hanging by her arms. A heavy fragment of stone binds her wrists. She is fastened directly to the wood. Look at the shape her body makes. You have seen this posture 1,000 times on your journey. Think of the small stone effigies you touch to call for help. Remember the screaming thieves strung up on high poles across Limgrave. You can even see this shape pressed into royal seals. The Greater will put her up there. She broke the Elden Ring, and the higher power demanded payment for that crime. Our queen is locked away inside the golden trunk she was meant to rule from. The supreme symbol of her reign became her cage. This woman built the Golden Order and shaped the laws of our reality. Now, she hangs there as a hollow vessel. She stays alive because her master forces her to remain breathing. Death refuses to take her away from the pain, and she cannot tear herself down. She has no choice in the matter. Her only purpose now is to hold the Elden beast safely inside her flesh. She is a container for something else. Those curved crosses we see everywhere are far more than simple decorations. Marika claimed that shape as her symbol because she knew her fate. Every carved stone shaped like a cross points to a harsh fact. The mother of our faith is a captive. The higher power strung her up to show us all what happens when you disobey. She hangs there as a lasting warning. Let us look back at the night of the Black Knives. Assassins slipped through the shadows of Lanedell. They carried daggers imbued with a stolen piece of destined death. Their target was Godwyn the Golden. They succeeded in striking down the first demigod, breaking the peace of our realm forever. When you investigate who orchestrated this slaughter, you uncover a sprawling, bloody family conspiracy. The master architect of the night was Lunar Princess Ranni. She stole the fragment of death and shaped the blades. She did this for a singular, selfish reason. She wanted to escape the control of the greater will, to shed her Empyrean flesh without truly dying. She needed a surrogate soul to perish in her place. She coldly chose Godwyn, destroying his spirit so she could walk free in a doll's body. Yet the deeper you dig, the closer the conspiracy spirals back to the high throne. The killers who swung the blades were Numen women. These assassins held close ties to Queen Marika. The queen herself belongs to this rare race. Believing an outside group of women from Marika's own secluded homeland managed to execute the highest assassination in history without the queen's blessing makes little sense. Many hidden clues imply our goddess was complicit in the attack, either opening the gates or turning a blind eye. Ranni supplied the magic and the motive, but Marika likely allowed the slaughter of her favored boy. Godwyn earned the love of every citizen across the land. His bright appearance matched a kind spirit. In return for that large heart, his sister used him as a metaphysical stepping stone, and his own mother may have helped arrange his end. Godwyn stood as a beacon of pure goodness, which is exactly why his family decided he made the perfect sacrifice. A frail monk named Goldmask walks the dusty roads of our realm in total silence. He wears a shining sun over his face and points a stiff finger toward the glowing branches above. He starves his own body to focus on religious scholarship. He seeks the untainted mechanics of the Golden Order. He wants to understand the exact math of the heavens. With the help of a specific incantation that strips away grand illusions, he He learns that Lord Rodigan and Queen Marika share the same body. The supreme ruler of our reality is split into two warring halves. The foundation of the world rests on a god violently fighting against itself. Goldmask spent decades searching for the hidden crack in the holy laws. He finally finds the massive fracture, and the weight of the discovery paralyzes him. He utters no words. He simply stands on a cliffside, throws his arms out wide, and freezes like a stone monument. A lifetime of quiet study led him directly to a truth so heavy it burned away his ability to speak. He realizes that clarity brings zero comfort. Uncovering the grand secret does not fix the broken trees or heal the bleeding earth. It leaves a man standing still under a cold sky. He takes this heavy knowledge and forces it into the shape of a new mending rune. He crafts a perfect equation to fix the flawed gods. Once he finishes that immense task, his frail body gives out. He collapses next to his life's work and passes away. He cared only about solving the puzzle. He had no desire to stick around and watch the repaired world spin. Brother Corhin starts his journey as a proud scholar of the Golden Order. He stands in the Round Table Hold and speaks with total confidence. He feels eager to travel the roads and study religion with his own eyes. Eventually, he joins forces with the silent monk known as Goldmask. Corhin believes this partnership will prove his lifelong faith is correct. The two men travel to the capital and uncover a hidden secret. A statue reveals the law of regression to them. The message plainly states that Lord Rodigan is Queen Marika. The ruling god of the land is split into two fighting halves. The entire Golden Order rests on the shoulders of a being at war with itself. This truth destroys Corhin. The flawless math he searched for turned out to be a lie, driving him to madness and despair. Neither man grasped the danger of Goldmask's final vision. The silent monk crafted a rule that removes the unpredictable emotions of gods from reality. His logic demands a perfect machine. If you follow this idea past its limit, the result looks incredibly bleak. A reality built on strict logic has no room for messy humans. The most loyal followers of strict rules always walk a dangerous edge. They eventually decide that the act of believing is a flaw that needs to be wiped clean. Anyone who claims the Elden Throne faces a heavy burden. You must choose a path to repair the shattered laws of the land. The problem remains simple. None of your choices cure the sickness in the soil. You might use the mending rune of perfect order crafted by Goldmask. This path removes the flawed desires of gods from the rules of nature. That sounds like a clean victory until you wonder what fills the empty space left behind. You could take the rune forged by me, Via, This grants the dead a permanent place in reality. This action also gives power to those who live in death, forcing the living to share the earth with walking corpses. If you accept the dung eater's blessing, you spread a foul sickness. Every child born from that day forward will carry the omen mark and grow heavy horns through their skin. Walking the age of stars takes the gods away and leaves mankind to wander in the cold dark. Opening the door to the frenzied flame burns the map to ash. Every path forward introduces a fresh disaster. Fixing the Elden Ring is impossible because the original foundation was already rotten. You fail to save the world when you become Elden Lord. You merely pick which type of suffering the survivors will face tomorrow. You select a specific brand of ruin and pray the people find a way to live through the fallout. Step inside the burning Erd-tree for the last time, and Queen Marika ignores your challenge. A different entity takes control of the broken body hanging before you. Lord Rodigan steps forward to fight. He grips the same hammer used to shatter the Elden Ring and tries desperately to protect the dying Golden Order. When you finally defeat him, the body collapses. Then, a massive hand reaches out from the darkness and drags Rodigan beneath the black water. The Elden Beast rises in his place. It transforms his broken remains into a glowing sword, turning the fallen lord into one final weapon. The Elden Beast is the true physical shape of the Elden Ring. The Greater will sent this creature down from the sky ages ago. The beast hides an enormous form. It looks like a glowing animal made of bright stars. This alien invader squeezed itself inside a human shell and stayed there for an era. Marika and Rodigan lived their reign sharing their skin with it. The god the citizens prayed to was actually a parasite wearing their rulers like a winter coat. When Marika shattered the golden laws, she did more than start a political war. She tried to force a squatter out of her own body. Rodigan fought against her and attempted to repair the ring, desperately protecting the system that kept all three of them bound together. The beast lived inside them for so many centuries that almost everyone forgot they were separate beings. You draw your weapon and strike down the creature that ruined their lives. Your victory brings no comfort to the queen. She spent too much time as a prisoner. Her mind broke long ago, leaving nothing behind to enjoy the taste of freedom. Climb far below the shiny streets of Lanedell, past the wet sewers, and push into the deep-root depth. Down here in the absolute dark, you can finally see the true foundation of the Erd-tree. Forget the small golden threads near the surface. These massive, sprawling wooden trunks form the base of the entire world. Long before the Golden Order ruled the surface, these roots were born from the ancient, primordial crucible. The Erd-tree did not conquer an older god. The Erd-tree simply grew out of it, shedding its wild past to become a symbol of order. However, this majestic root system is actively dying. Look closely at the wood. It is choked with a gray, rotting sickness. The Erd tree's roots spend their energy desperately pulling up fuel to keep the surface looking beautiful, while completely ignoring the infection, destroying them from below. The warm light shining over Lanedell, the holy glow that priests worship, operates as a massive illusion. The shining Erd tree stands tall purely as a facade, masking the fact that its very foundations are rotting away in the dark. Our blacksmith at the Round Table Hold does far more than hammer iron in a cramped room. A thick chain binds his ankle to the floor. By his own admission, he has swung that hammer for hundreds of years. Queen Marika herself locked him inside that hall and handed him a singular mission. She ordered him to forge a weapon capable of killing a god. She gave him this command while the rune of destined death remained locked away. Under those laws, striking down a deity is impossible. Marika handed him a grand purpose while ensuring his job would never finish. Since the task lacks a finish line, his sentence has no end point either. When he mentions the queen, his voice shakes with panic. He holds a deep fear of her, suggesting she inflicted a deep trauma he refuses to talk about. He belongs to a race considered beneath notice, yet his captors keep his heart beating. They feed him because his scarred hands understand the metal better than anyone else. He hammered steel inside a pocket dimension for countless lifetimes. He tries to achieve a miracle for a ruler who might already be a corpse. He never asked for this burden. Then, a young girl named Rodrika walks into his forge. A surprising gentleness wakes up inside the old prisoner. He finds a warm corner of his heart he surely thought was dead. Later on, when the great hall catches fire and the walls begin to fall, he refuses to leave his anvil. He stays in the burning room to finish his impossible weapon. The work became his entire identity, and he cannot imagine drawing breath without a hammer in his hand. Most tarnished warriors believe a noble purpose called our exiled kind back to these shores. They think the grace returned to our eyes because the throne sits empty, waiting for a righteous ruler. A much colder truth hides beneath that proud assumption. We were never invited back to rule in peace. Queen Marika dragged us across the fog because she needed a blade sharp enough to cut her own kingdom down. Long ago, she stripped the golden light from our ancestors. She cast our fathers and mothers out into the harsh storms of the Badlands. We always viewed this banishment as a heavy curse. In reality, it served as a calculated forge. She forced generations of our people to struggle, bleed, and survive without divine comfort. The queen wanted to breed a bloodline of fighters tough enough to slaughter deities. When you follow the golden rays pointing toward the next stronghold, you might feel the warmth of a loving God guiding your steps. You must cast that comforting thought aside. That light carries no fresh instructions from the heavens. You are following a map drawn by a dead woman. Marika hangs helplessly inside the Erd-tree, unable to speak or move. Before she ever struck the Elden Ring with her hammer, she plotted this exact course. She loaded the weapon, aimed it at her own laws, and pulled the trigger. We are merely the arrow flying blindly through the air. Traveling along a heavy path, she decided long before we took our first breath. Walk off the beaten paths between the large castles and ancient ruins. Look down into the tall grass. You will find corpses scattered everywhere. These bodies belong to tarnished, rather than local foot soldiers or wandering beasts. A golden light woke these warriors from a long sleep and dragged them back to these shores. A divine voice told them they were special. It pointed them toward a grand destiny, and then they died miserably in the mud. No one bothered to gather their remains. No priest dug a proper hole or sang a final prayer. The guiding light that pushed them forward vanished the moment their hearts stopped beating. The world ignored their sacrifice and kept turning. You must realize you are far from the first champion to chase the high throne. Hundreds of hopeful fighters walked this exact route before you arrived. They answered the same holy call and ended up rotting by the roadside. Every ounce of their bravery, their deep pain, and their blind faith meant nothing in the end. They became nameless obstacles you casually step over on your way to a palace. The heavens claim our kind is chosen for greatness. The bloated bodies littering the fields show exactly how cruel that selection process really is. Our companion Melina travels quietly by our side. Most people view her as a simple guide without a past. However, hidden histories buried in the land of shadow reveal a heavy secret. She is Queen Marika's daughter. She shares blood with the fierce Lord Mesmer. Unlike her royal siblings, no priest ever carved her name into the stone monuments. The Golden Order never acknowledged her birth. The kingdom gave her zero history. Instead of a royal title, her mother gave her a singular task. Marika commanded her daughter to guide a tarnished warrior and eventually burn her own flesh to ash. Melina exists to become the fuel that sets the Erd-tree on fire. You might expect a person handed such a fate to scream in anger. Melina does the opposite. She accepts her harsh duty with calm. She approaches her own fiery end as a necessary job. This quiet acceptance feels far more upsetting than a display of bitter tears. She sits beside you at the campfire and speaks with warmth. She asks for nothing in return. She only wants to prove herself useful on the long road toward the mountaintop. We will never uncover why Queen Marika forced this path upon her own child. We cannot even say for certain if Melina fully understands the reasoning behind her mother's design. The true sadness of her story runs much deeper than her eventual death. The real heartbreak lies in her beginning. Nobody ever gave her the chance to live a normal life. Her hands were made to spark a fire, and her feet were made to walk toward a furnace. She was crafted from birth to be a sacrifice. When you step inside the Round Table hold, the heavy doors close behind you, and a deep sense of safety washes over your shoulders. You smell burning wood. You see warriors resting quietly by a large hearth. The floors and walls feel solid. Yet, if you try to point to this fortress on a map of our realm, your finger will find nothing. This gathering hall sits removed from the physical earth. It rests outside the normal borders of our reality. You cannot ride a horse to its gates. No hidden trail leads up to the front steps. A golden thread of grace provides the only way in or out. We rely on Melina to pull us across the gap. She knows how to navigate the empty spaces hiding between physical locations. Look at the broken champions sitting near the fire, at Rugier slowly losing his strength. They linger in those rooms because stepping back outside means facing a harsh, violent land. The stone walls offer comfort. The warm light from the hearth truly heals aching bones. Still, a strange truth hangs over every conversation spoken inside those halls. Everyone gathered around the table understands they are sitting inside a ghost. The fortress floats in an empty void. The safest roof in our broken world technically exists nowhere at all. Step inside the holy chamber, and you will find an old, blind woman sitting beside a massive pair of 2 fingers. These crones dedicate their existence to reading the slow twitches of those hairy, wooden joints. They speak for the divine, or at least they pretend to. The silence hanging over their work tells a darker story about our faith. The communication lines broke a long time ago. The greater will abandon this land. The higher powers stopped sending messages down to the 2 fingers. Yet, those large digits keep twitching. They continue to bend and scrape across the stone floors out of mindless habit. They perform an empty ritual holding no new meaning. The old women reading these movements surely feel the emptiness. They spend every hour touching those callous joints, so they must sense the hollow nature of the signs. Instead of confessing this loss, they choose to improvise. As you travel deeper into the continent, listen to how the crones speak. Their clear instructions slowly turn into foggy riddles and broad philosophical guesses. They hide their panic behind vague poetry. Every holy task given to our kind relies on a lie. When a crone commands you to repair the broken world and claim the high throne, she acts on outdated notes. She takes the last known wishes of an absent master and stretches them to fit the current disaster. In the worst cases, she feels the dead would twitch and invents a story to keep her own hope alive. Anyone who spends a few nights traveling alongside Blythe, the half-wolf quickly learns to admire him. He swings his heavy sword with honor. He keeps his promises. He holds onto loyalty in a harsh era where most knights easily betray their own kings. Sadly, this noble warrior never owned his own heart. The higher powers built him for a singular task. He exists as a shadow given to Princess Ranni. The urge to protect her is stitched directly into his bones and blood. A tragic flaw ruins his design. The two fingers created him to serve their grand laws, even as they gifted him to the princess. When Ranni finally rebels against her glowing masters, Blythe's mind tears straight down the middle. His soul demands he protect his lady, while his base instincts scream at him to execute the traitor. A mortal brain cannot survive that kind of pressure. He tries desperately to fight off the heavy commands of his creators. He wants to stay true to Ranni. He howls into the night sky, battling an invisible chain pulling tightly around his neck. The weight of these conflicting orders shatters his sanity. If you return to the foggy steps outside the princess's tower, you will find him broken. He swings his blade wildly at the shadows. He snaps at the wind. He attacks any friend or foe who steps too close. He never wanted to lose his mind, and he lacks the strength to cure himself. Giving him a quick death at the edge of your own sword stands as the only kindness left to offer him. Dying by a friend's hand saves him from rotting away as a rabid beast. Long before our current age of shattered lords, the Nox walked freely under an open sky. These people built the eternal city on the surface of the earth. They spent their nights looking upward, charting the movements of distant stars, building their culture around the cold light of space. They followed a vast, ancient religion that ruled long before the greater will claimed our land. When the Golden Masters demanded their obedience, the Nox firmly refused to bow down. The greater will answered this defiance with destruction. The Golden Rulers did not execute these proud astronomers. They buried them alive. The old armor worn by the Nox tells the story of this harsh exile. The higher powers forced an entire civilization deep underground, locking a whole society away from the real night sky they loved so much. If you climb down into the caverns of Nokron or Nixtella, you will see tall spires and grand archways. These people clearly knew how to build a beautiful kingdom. Now, their gorgeous towers sit trapped inside a cave, lit only by glowing rocks and artificial magic. An angry god decided that anyone who refused to kneel did not deserve to see the moon ever again. Look up when you walk through the streets of Nokron, and the ceiling sparkles with hundreds of bright, twinkling stars. A beautiful night sky stretches over the quiet buildings. The sky is fake. The Nox spent their early history worshipping the stars and building powerful magic based on the sky. Once the Golden Order sealed them underground, cutting them off from the real thing, They responded by gluing a fake cosmos to the roof of their prison. They light the stones, pretend they are real stars, and continue praying in the dark. A deep sadness hangs over this art project. These desperate people refuse to let go of their religion. They spend their lives bowing their heads to a painted ceiling. The fake stars look so perfect that the children born in Nokron believe they are staring into the heavens. These prisoners missed the real sky so badly they tried to paint a fake heaven on the ceiling of their own cage. The Golden Order did not feel satisfied pushing the Nox underground. After locking the heavy stone doors, the Greater Will unleashed a hunting beast to finish the slaughter. They called down a creature named Ostel, Naturel born of the void. This monster arrived from the cold dark above, carrying a body made of strange bone and starlit flesh. It exists to eat everything it touches. The higher powers dropped this beast directly onto the nameless, eternal city. Ostel leveled the entire capital in a single night of violence. If you travel into the deep-root depths today, you can walk through the scattered remains of that massacre. You will find thousands of shattered homes and broken walls. An advanced society was wiped off the map. Their neighboring cities, Nokron and Nixtella, only survived the assault because they sat far enough away from the initial crash. Today, Ostel no longer lurks in those specific ruins. The massive creature crawled away and now slumbers far beyond the lake of rot, guarding the lowest edges of the underground. The god that dropped it there never bothered to call it back home. Perhaps the beast thinks its violent task remains unfinished. Or maybe the Golden Masters forgot they left their weapon running. Ostel sits like a rabid hound, locked inside a dark cellar. Without a master to guide it, the insect slowly warps into something even uglier, rotting away in the damp caves long after it destroyed the house. When you walk the pale streets of the eternal city of Nixtella, you will eventually face a strange cavalry. Silver-armored soldiers charge at you while sitting on the backs of massive ants. Most travelers brace for the sudden attack. You raise your shield to avoid getting crushed by their heavy jaws. You are fighting for survival, so you probably never stop to examine the faces of the creatures trying to trample you. If you manage to survive the ambush, take a moment to study the fallen beasts. Some warriors in our lands forge strong bonds with their animals. They train their wolves or hawks through years of patience and shared hunts. The warriors of Nixtella do nothing of the sort. These pale soldiers never earned the loyalty of those insects. The beasts carry their riders through unnatural force. You can find the proof right there on the insect's head. Compare a wild ant crawling on the cavern's ceiling to one forced to carry a rider. The free bugs possess plain dark eyes. The captive ones stare forward with a bright pink glow burning behind their lenses. This light acts as a clear mark of coercive sorcery. A forceful magic commands the creature to obey every direction without hesitation. These creatures never agreed to serve the underground cities. They were snatched from their colonies and altered. The riders stripped away all their natural instincts. They turned living bugs into mindless weapons for battles they have no part in. The masters sitting in the saddles feel no pity for their steeds. They hold the reins and treat the insects like disposable tools. Higher powers steal the free will of kings and champions all across our broken world. Gods force their heavy hands over human minds every day. Yet, looking at these cavalry units reveals a sad truth about our home. The desire to break another being's mind reaches all the way down to the lowest forms of life. The strong will always find a way to leash the weak, even if they have to drag bugs from the rock to do it. You find heavy stone catacombs built into the cliffs all over the map. These dark tombs do more than hold dusty bones. They act as essential pipes to funnel dead souls directly into the Erdtree's roots. The golden tree recycles the spirits and births them back into the world. Right now, the plumbing system is broken. The dark hallways overflow with aggressive skeletons and angry spirits. Dead warriors wake up and attack you because they possess nowhere else to go. Prince Godwyn's rotting corpse lies at the bottom of deep-root depths, leaking deathroot into the soil. The black sickness wraps around the golden roots and acts like a thick dam. The dead souls flow into the tombs, hit the deathroot, and pile up. The rooms burst with bodies that cannot move forward. Every single tomb you clear out is a flooded basement, ruined by a dead god. A single assassination on a cold night centuries ago permanently broke the machinery of the afterlife. Giant stone mausoleums walk across the grassy plains on massive rocky legs. Old ledgers confirm these roaming buildings serve as tombs for soulless demigods. These are Queen Marika's forgotten children, individuals who lost their souls and have nothing left to send back to the Erdtree. Giant bells swing beneath the stone structures, ringing a loud, heavy song to mourn the dead. The saddest part of their journey involves their destination. They possess no destination. They stomp around the exact same fields in a wide circle. They never walk toward a graveyard. The soulless bodies resting inside the stone beds can never finish dying, which means they can never rest. The mausoleums just keep walking and ringing their bells to delay the end. Stopping the march would mean the funeral is over, and a funeral cannot end for a body that refuses to die. Every ring of the heavy bell sings a song that lacks a final note. The mausoleums marched long before you crossed the sea, and they will keep shaking the ground long after you turn to dust. They endlessly carry coffins that nobody wants to bury. The workers of Lanedell refer to the subterranean shunning grounds as a simple sewer. On the surface, the damp tunnels serve exactly that purpose. The capital uses the dark pipes to to flush away its garbage. However, if you examine the specific items and prisoners locked down there, the damp halls function as a secret library. Queen Marika hid her darkest mistakes in the dark. Children born with omen horns faced a brutal fate depending on their blood. If a commoner birthed an omen, the guards chopped the horns off, killing the infant instantly. The royal family, however, birthed their own omens. Because of their noble blood, they were spared the excision. Instead, their horns were allowed to grow, and they were thrown down into the sewers to hide the golden family's shame. You will also discover a deep pit filled with the corpses of traveling merchants, buried alive and left to starve. The chaotic three fingers wait, locked behind a massive stone door. The path leading to the frenzied flame forces you to walk directly through Queen Marika's bloody mistakes. You march past every victim the Golden Order tried to erase from history. The layout is highly intentional. The frenzied flame forces you to look closely at the cruelty of the current rulers before handing you the match to burn their kingdom down. High above the streets of Lanedell, the Golden Order built shining towers and golden monuments. The rulers want everyone to look up at the light. They want you to ignore the graveyard hiding far below the palace floors. Throughout your travels, you meet quiet merchants sitting by small fires. They play soft music on stringed instruments and gladly sell you a few useful supplies. Sometimes they share a brief memory of a lost home. If you travel deep into the subterranean shunning grounds, you will find exactly what happened to their families. The golden rulers rounded up this entire civilization and threw them into a deep pit. The guards sealed the iron doors and buried the merchants alive. These wanderers committed no acts of violence. They prayed to a different power. The Golden Order labeled their peaceful religion a dangerous heresy. The priests decided this culture needed to be erased. Tossing them into a forgotten abyss allowed the bright capital to continue its holy days without looking at the slaughter. Down in the pitch black, those trapped people starved and suffered together. Thousands of voices cried out in agony. That collection of pain acted like a beacon. The sheer volume of their despair reached out and summoned a foreign god down into the caverns. You find the three fingers waiting at the bottom of that pit. This entity offers a fire that burns away all existence. The frenzied flame answered the tears of those buried merchants. Their immense sorrow drew in a weapon designed to melt the entire world down to nothing. The priests of the Golden Order teach a specific lesson about Albinaurics. The holy books declare these artificial beings possess no souls. The scholars do not write this rule to explain the natural world. They write it to give hunters a green light. Calling a creature soulless removes them from the circle of grace. Normal citizens expect their spirits to return to the Erdtree after death. Since an albinoric lacks a spirit, the Church claims they have nothing to return. The holy laws classify these beings as objects. They are treated like wooden chairs or iron tools. You can use them, break them, and throw them away without breaking a single law. This label gives cruel men a free pass. Sir Gideon Ofnir felt no guilt when he ordered his men to butcher that hidden village. Lord Reichardt felt justified tying those pale bodies to his wooden racks in the manor. Average citizens form hunting parties and slaughter these outcasts for sport. The hunters sleep perfectly well at night because the local priest told them they were only breaking artificial toys. Nobody stops your character to explain how wrong this looks. No hero steps forward to deliver a grand speech about morality. You walk through the bloody aftermath and judge the carnage for yourself. The ruling class designed a religious rule to excuse extreme violence. That small piece of doctrine turns mass murder into a casual chore, and it works flawlessly. When you first enter the Round Table Hold, Sir Gideon Ofnir sits among tall piles of books. He acts as a reliable guide for newly arrived travelers. He shares his deep well of knowledge with anyone willing to listen. He speaks with a steady voice, presenting himself as a patient scholar who only wants to help you survive this harsh land. Follow his actions closely, and a colder truth comes to light. Look at the slaughtered albinoric village hidden beneath the cliffs of Liurnia. Gideon sent his agents into that damp cave. He learned those outcasts held half of a secret medallion leading to the Halictree. He needed that artifact to complete his charts. He refused to open a peaceful parley. He commanded his men to butcher the entire community. He viewed a wholesale massacre as the fastest way to get exactly what he wanted. His adopted daughter, Nephili Lu, walked into that settlement before the blades had even stopped swinging. The sight of innocent blood soaking the ground shattered her heart. She knelt among the corpses and wept for the senseless loss of life. When she returned to confront her father, Gideon offered zero comfort. He watched her break down and studied her tears with a cold eye. Her intense grief amounted to nothing more than another piece of data to file away in his mind. This man lacks the spiked armor of a traditional tyrant. He commits atrocities from a comfortable chair. He calculates the price of human lives on paper and decides they are a fine currency to spend. He hoards facts with such a hunger that he lost his basic humanity. He spent so many years reading old texts that he forgot why the act of shedding blood matters. He only cares about the answer on the final page, ignoring the bodies he stepped on to read it. Look closely at the creatures we call the misbegotten. You spot these winged beings shaped like lions slaving away in the sulfur mines of Volcano Manor. You fight them as they defend ruined castles. The priests of the Golden Order dismiss them entirely. The Church labels them simple animals. since their bodies carry the chaotic marks of the ancient crucible. The rulers claim they belong outside the boundaries of polite civilization. A quick glance at how these beings live proves the church is lying. Spend time watching a camp of misbegotten from a distance. You will notice a highly organized society. When one of their pack falls in battle, the others gather around the body and mourn the loss. They decorate their homes with specific shapes and gathered objects. A warrior swinging a heavy greatsword to defend the ruined courtyards of castle mourn fights with intense training and clear technique. The strongest proof against the church sits right inside our own gathering hall. Master Hugh holds the power to forge weapons capable of striking down deities. He belongs to this exact race. The priests classify his kind as mindless brutes, yet he creates the most advanced steel in our history. The rulers who put chains on his people looked directly at his brilliant mind and unmatched craftsmanship. Instead of admitting their own prejudice, they smiled at their luck for capturing such a useful beast. A blind spot sits right in the middle of our glorious society. The Golden Order built a towering mountain of guilt by denying the clear humanity staring right back at them. When you gain access to the sealed chambers of the Round Table hold, you find a locked door. Behind it sits the loathsome Dung Eater. He appears as a crimson spirit, surrounded by heaps of rotting bodies. The sight alone tells you immediately that you are looking at a ruthless murderer. Yet the truth of his crimes goes much further than simple slaughter. The reality of what he inflicts on his captives remains mostly unspoken, left to your imagination through the bloody clues he leaves behind. You can find his calling cards scattered across the lands between. These vile items are known as seedbed curses. They appear as sickening growths made of infected flesh, sprouting directly from the corpses of the people he violated. This rot does more than kill the body. The curse actively grabs hold of the victim's soul and prevents their spirit from returning to the Erdtree. The poor souls are left hanging in a permanent state of suffering, denied the peace of a natural end. Blackguard Big Boggart once witnessed the Dung Eater commit this exact crime. When Boggart tries to talk about that night, his hands shake. He refuses to describe the events directly. He calls it the most disgusting display he has ever laid eyes on in his life. The exact physical steps of this defilement remain hidden. We only see the bloody results carved into the flesh. This lack of clear explanation forces your mind to fill in the blanks, creating a picture far uglier than any spoken words could achieve. The Dung Eater is performing a calculated ritual of violence. He wants to poison the golden cycle of rebirth itself. He harvests these infected souls one by one. His ultimate goal is to gather enough of these curses to forge a heavy rune of disease. He plans to use that rune to inject his sickness directly into the laws of nature, ensuring every future generation shares his rot. there is a disturbing piece of history attached to the dung eater that many travelers overlook. Long ago, the authorities finally caught this monster. They dragged him into the public square and tied a rope around his neck. A large crowd gathered to watch the executioners hang him high. The people cheered as they watched him struggle and eventually die for his crimes. The citizens watched his armored body swing from the wooden beams. They clapped their hands, celebrated the victory, and went home to sleep peacefully. They honestly believed the nightmare was over. They were wrong. The dung eater came back from the grave. He returned as the exact same monster who hung from the gallows, and he immediately resumed his bloody work. He survived the rope because he is a tarnished warrior. The guiding light of grace called him back to the waking world. That same holy light keeps you alive during your journey. The golden rays that heal your wounds also gave a serial killer immortality. The greater will ignores the character of the people it resurrects. The Erdtree never weighs a man's heart to see if he deserves a second chance. The light reaches out and pulls every single tarnished back to their feet. This means the miracle of resurrection lacks any moral judgment. The highest blessing in the land is handed out freely to everyone, even to a butcher who deserves to rot in the ground. Blackguard Big Boggart barely leaves a footprint in the long history of the gods. He operates as a simple thief turned merchant. He spends his days sitting by the shallow waters of the Lanedale moat, boiling freshly caught prawns over an open fire. If you take the time to sit by his pot and share a few meals, you realize he is one of the few truly decent men left in the land. Boggart enjoys the simple things. He likes hot food and quiet evenings. While demigods tear the world apart fighting for a golden throne, Boggart just wants to run his cooking fire in peace. Sadly, this quiet life attracts unwanted attention. The moment you open the dung eater's prison cell in the sewers, the killer walks straight to the Lanedale moat. Boggart never crossed paths with the murderer before this day. The armored butcher did not hunt the merchant out of personal spite. He simply chose the moat as his new killing ground, and Boggart happened to be sitting right in the middle of it. When you finally return to the boiling pot, you find no clash of swords. The scene is quiet and heartbreaking. Boggart lies flat in the shallow water with a deep slash across his throat. The merchant is bleeding out quickly. He uses his final breaths to mumble a few words about his beloved seafood. He cries out in confusion. He cannot understand why this stranger attacked him out of nowhere. He lived a peaceful life and never did anything to invite this kind of violence. Our journey across the lands between is packed with grand sacrifices meant to reshape reality. Boggart's murder carries no higher purpose. It is just a senseless slaughter of a good man. Watching him bleed out in the shallows hurts far more than watching kings fall. travel down the cliffside paths of Liurnia, and you will stumble into a quiet, peaceful village known as Jarburg. Beautiful flowers grow between the small stone houses. The residents are living jars of all sizes, hopping happily through the grass and tending to the soil. A small clay pot named Jarbairn greets you warmly. The child possesses strong opinions about the world, shares funny stories about the neighbors, and dreams of growing up to be a legendary fighter. The village feels incredibly charming until you stop and consider how these creatures function. The jars serve as heavy clay buckets built to carry the chopped remains of dead soldiers. A strange magic mixes the rotting meat and broken bones together to animate the pottery. Every single pot sliding through the flower beds is essentially a walking graveyard. When the little Jarbairn speaks with a high, innocent voice, that sound escapes from a lid packed tight with dead, mutilated men. Think of Iron Fist Alexander, the friendliest warrior in the land. You find him on the red beaches of Caelid shortly after the Radon festival ends. He eagerly scoops fresh corpses from the sand and shoves them directly into his own body to replenish his strength. He explains this bloody chore with a loud, booming laugh. His warm personality makes the brutal reality hit much harder. The bright, sunny atmosphere of Jarburg relies on a foundation of chopped limbs and rotting muscle. Iron Fist Alexander travels a long, dangerous road. You first meet him trapped in the soil of Limgrave. Eventually, his journey leads him high into the sky, stepping onto the floating stones of Farum Azola. He spends his entire trip gathering the remains of fallen warriors and pulling them inside his clay shell. He constantly absorbs the blood and strength of fallen champions. He acts this way out of a deep religious devotion. He desperately wants to prove his worth. He builds his strength so that an even greater warrior will eventually crack him open and harvest his insides. He aims to become a valuable prize rather than the one taking the prize. When you finally draw your sword against him in Farum Azola, he fights you because he believes he is ready. He decides you are the mighty champion he spent his life searching for, and he wants you to smash his shell to pieces. When he finally falls apart, his dying words ring with satisfaction. He accomplished his ultimate goal. He judged the value of his entire life based on whether a stronger person wanted to harvest his guts. You gave him exactly what he begged for. The residents of Jarburg would celebrate his passing. He died a perfect death according to his local customs. Those customs just happen to demand that the greatest honor a person can achieve is becoming raw meat for another man's dinner. Whenever Iron Fist Alexander speaks, he shows kindness. He holds personal preferences. He sets long-term goals for his journey. He puffs his chest with pride when he wins, and he sulks when his body cracks. Back in Jarburg, the smaller jars the exact same way. If you sit and listen to them, you easily recognize distinct personalities blooming among the flowers. A dark question hangs over their heads, and they lack the tools to ever ask it. Does the mind controlling the clay belong to the jar itself? Or is it a confusing mixture of the rotting brains trapped inside? When a craftsman packs 50 dead soldiers into a pot, does he birth a brand new child, or does he form a crowded committee of screaming ghosts? You have to wonder if Alexander's brave laughter truly belongs to him. Perhaps his personality is simply the average mood of 100 dead nights, mashed into a smooth paste by the magical clay. When the nobleman Diolos arrives at Jarburg, he gently buries the shattered pieces of fallen jars. The surviving pots gather around and mourn the dead. They feel deep emotions. The exact nature of those emotions remains blurry, and that blurriness makes the whole situation deeply unsettling. Alexander charges into his final duel, carrying absolute confidence in his own identity. He might be the first clay vessel to ever feel so sure of himself. He might also be completely wrong about the voice inside his head. Travelers often pause when they first look out over Liurnia. You see wide pools of shallow water catching the light. Tall spires rise from the mist, holding on to a fading glory. The region looks deeply beautiful at a glance. Look closer, and you will notice the landscape is giving way. The whole area is pulling itself downward. Stone buildings lean to one side. Old roads vanish beneath the ripples. The bedrock holding this basin together is crumbling apart. The land cannot support its weight anymore. You would never guess the cause of this collapse from the surface. You must travel far underground to find the truth. Directly below those peaceful lakes sits a cavern filled with pure decay. This is the Lake of Rot. Long ago, a blind swordsman trapped an outer god of scarlet rot deep inside those caverns. The prison walls are weak. The disease still leaks from its prison, and the rot bleeds upward through the rock, steadily eating away at the thick layers of stone holding Liurnia up. The acid refuses to rush. It takes its time, and the map is gradually sinking into a cavern of disease. Every leaning tower results from this decay. When you spot a flooded village, you are witnessing the work of a trapped deity. The rot chews through the crust from the bottom up, turning solid foundations to mush. The few scavengers and soldiers still wandering the flooded roads of Liurnia, live on borrowed time. The ground holding their boots is actively collapsing beneath them, and they have no clue about the danger. The golden priests, who once maintained the safety of the realm, abandoned their posts ages ago. Without a miracle falling from the sky, the region faces a guaranteed doom. The swamps above will inevitably crash down into the pink sludge below, and everyone currently fishing in those lakes will be long dead before the final rocks give way. Sometimes As you explore old strongholds and deep catacombs, the stone floor erupts. A massive beast shaped like a snake bursts up from the ground. We call these monsters ulcerated tree spirits. Their bodies resemble golden wood sickened by rot, shifting into living flesh right before your eyes. If you pause to consider where these creatures come from, the ideas become highly unsettling. No scholar holds a clear answer about their birth. Anyone who claims to know their true history is guessing. The old texts offer no solid facts to explain how they take shape. We must rely on the physical clues they leave behind. You will always find these beasts lurking near the bases of minor Erd trees or tangled in the large roots far underground. When you strike one down, you can usually pluck a golden seed from its remains. Look closely at the dead husk. The creature resembles a thick branch infected by a disease. The wood changed into something alive, and that life hates us. A popular theory tries to make sense of this nightmare. We know the dead travel to the roots to find new life. Perhaps these creatures are spirits who failed that journey. A soul might have touched the divine roots and tangled together with the wood. The tree failed to absorb the spirit properly. It rejected the soul and created a monster. The creature's movements support this idea. It violently slams its heavy body into walls. It twists its spine in sudden bursts of panic. A normal beast hunts with purpose. This monster thrashes like a prisoner trapped inside a shape it despises. Every one of these beasts stands as an open question. The light of the Erd tree made them this way, revealing a mistake in the natural order. We lack the answers to know exactly how that error happened. Before the shattering broke our realm apart, we lost Godwyn the Golden. He fell first among the demigods. The assassins claimed a rare prize that night, yet they took only half a life. They killed his soul. His physical form remained behind, breathing and hollow. He became a shell left without a master to guide it. With the spirit gone, that empty vessel started to change. You can find the source of this sickness buried far beneath our feet in deeper depths. The beloved Golden Prince does not rest peacefully down there. Instead, his body acts like a rot creeping through the foundations of the world. It expands without stopping, feeding on the stone and what it touches. This growth twists his features into something foreign. His eyes and mouth push through the bark of old trees far away from his actual resting place. Look closely at his main corpse, and you see he grows fins and clammy skin like a beast born in the deep waters. He is turning into a creature we have no name for. Our histories hold no words to describe a being made of flesh that never stops shifting. A dark thought hangs heavily around this transformation. A traveler might wonder if some small part of Godwyn feels these changes. His true soul is gone forever. We know this for a fact. Yet, perhaps a stain of his old self survives inside that spreading meat. A broken piece of thought might be trapped inside a cage. No one can say for sure if he experiences the pain of this endless growth. Maybe the dead faces staring from the wood are just empty lumps of skin. Maybe there is no suffering behind those blank eyes. The silence leaves us guessing. What we do know is that he refuses to halt. His flesh forces a path through the rocks. His corrupted face blooms across the shadows of the underground. He was once our brightest champion. Now, he infects the exact roots meant to give dead things a proper end. The sickness runs too deep to cut away. We are forced to look at what he has become, and we lack the power to put him out of his misery. He is stuck somewhere between living and passing on, filling the caves with a tragedy we cannot solve. High up in the freezing peaks of the mountaintops of the giants, Castle Saul takes a constant beating from the snow and wind. Spectral nights guard the frozen walkways. These ghostly men have marched along the walls for longer than the bricks have held together. The pale phantoms continue practicing their sword swings. They march in perfect squares and maintain strict military discipline. They spend every single day executing an old command that remains unfinished. Ages ago, these soldiers marched to Castle Saul to perform a grand ritual funded by Lord Miquella. Miquella planned to swallow the sun to give his brother, Prince Godwyn, a proper death. The assassins killed Prince Godwyn's soul, leaving his body alive and rotting. The knights prayed for an eclipse to finish the job. The sun refused to hide. The ritual failed entirely. The soldiers stood their ground because their commander ordered them to wait until the sky turned black. They froze to death, standing in their boots. Their flesh melted away, leaving their spirits tied to the stone. Castle Saul is packed with men who possess loyalty stronger than death. A king issued an order, and the ghosts refuse to stop marching until the job is done. Travel along the broken roads of Liurnia, and you will eventually cross paths with a blind maiden named Hyetta. A thick cloth covers her eyes, leaving her in total darkness. She wanders blindly across the fields, guided only by a deep religious devotion. When you meet her, she makes a humble request. She asks you to find and deliver a specific fruit she calls shabriri grapes. Whenever you drop one of these items into her waiting hands, she eats it with clear joy. She claims the meal sparks a warm fire deep inside her chest. This heat creates a bright glow she finds incredibly beautiful. She praises the flavor, claiming they taste delectably tender and sweet. She smiles broadly and thanks you for helping her step closer to her destination. The reality of her diet is upsetting. These soft fruits are actually human eyeballs. They sit rotting in the dirt after falling from the skulls of men and women who lost their minds. The cloudy yellow spheres Hyetta cheerfully chews on belonged to outcasts who stared into the frenzied flame. They They encountered the three fingers, and the burning god scorched their sanity away, leaving only these ruined organs behind. As a traveler walking these lands, you hold this ugly knowledge. You can clearly see the nerve endings attached to the offering. The young pilgrim, however, lives in blindness. She holds no clue about what she is swallowing. Eventually, she pauses her journey and asks a simple question. She wonders aloud what these sweet fruits actually look like. At this moment, you can choose to explain the bitter truth. You can tell her she is eating the melting eyes of diseased madmen. When the words leave your mouth, her body violently reacts. She drops to her knees and throws up everything in her stomach. The shock steals her voice. She sits on the path and stays quiet for a long time. You might expect her to quit her mission right then and there. Instead, she slowly climbs back to her feet. She wipes her mouth and resumes her long walk. She makes a firm decision that her beliefs matter more than the disgusting reality of her food. She accepts the heavy toll. Watching this young woman force herself to chew on infected eyes, just to feel a spark of faith, stands out as truly disturbing. The lands between holds plenty of bloody sights and cruel monsters. Yet, witnessing a blind girl eagerly devour the flesh of the insane leaves a uniquely sickening feeling in your stomach. Let us talk about the boy forever cursed with youth. Mikilla holds a firm reputation as the gentlest soul walking our fractured world. People speak of his name with tears in their eyes. They claim his heart holds endless room for the sick, the outcast, and the forgotten. Yet, a careful look at his methods paints a deeply chilling picture. He did not inspire all that loyalty through kindness. He forced that devotion directly into the minds of his followers. He built a trap disguised as a warm embrace. You can find proof of this manipulation in a simple silver branch. Craftsmen bless these twigs with Mikilla's personal magic. We call them bewitching branches. When you strike an enemy with one, a sudden change takes over their mind. Their fury vanishes. The victim drops their shield and looks at you with adoration. The branch does not persuade them to stop fighting. It hijacks their thoughts and commands them to love you. Mikilla created this tool. It carries his exact signature. Once you understand his power, you start to question every act of bravery done in his family's name. Think about the famous Cleanrot Knights. Those warriors marched right into the toxic swamps of Ionia. They let the scarlet rot eat their skin and ruin their lungs just to stand beside his twin sister, Melania. We assumed they possessed unmatched courage. Now, we have to wonder if Mikilla pushed a button inside their heads. Consider the royal knight Loretta. She abandoned her lifelong oaths to the Carrion Queens. She traveled across the snow to guard the heavy gates of the Halictree. Did she truly want to turn her back on her home? And what about the endless lines of broken travelers seeking his sanctuary? They march through freezing blizzards and die by the hundreds on the road. Do they walk on their own 2 feet, or does a magical leash drag them forward? If you travel into the hidden land of shadow, you will find hard proof of this crime. The history buried in that dark place shows exactly how his mind works. During his journey there, Mikilla deliberately shattered his own great spell. He dropped the charm, controlling his small army of followers. He did not do this as a test of loyalty. He broke his rune because he had to discard everything, including his body, his lineage, and his divine power, to ascend to godhood. The sudden release of his followers was merely a side effect of his ambition. This single choice reveals his true nature. It proves he knew the magic was active the entire time. He was aware that he was holding his friends captive. The gentlest savior walking our land built his peaceful kingdom by stealing away free will. He did not cure the loneliness of his people. He manufactured their love in a workshop. Old myths hint at a strange connection between Mikilla and the mysterious Saint Trina. Digging deep into the land of shadow finally proves the rumors true. Mikilla and Saint Trina share the same soul. They operate as 2 distinct faces worn by a single powerful being. Queen Marika split her mind to become Rodigan, and Mikilla followed the exact same path. The gentle girl who traveled the roads handing out sweet sleep to tired workers was actually Mikilla in disguise. Mikilla crafted this purple-haired identity to walk among the common people without carrying the baggage of a golden prince. When Moog ripped Mikilla from his sacred tree, Saint Trina vanished from the roads. The mask cannot walk when the master is locked in chains. Every purple lily left behind carries a deep sadness. Mikilla understood his own immense power. He built a softer, kinder face to comfort his followers. He also used that sweet face as an effective tool to manipulate the masses. His gentle hands offered true comfort, but they also kept the peasants sedated. Needle Knight Letta stands proud as the most loyal follower in Mikilla's camp. She threw her entire past away to serve Mikilla. She believes his kingdom will bring peace to the rotting earth. She speaks with a calm, steady voice. She feels comfortable with her choices and never looks back. Suddenly, Mikilla shatters his own magic charm to shed his flesh. Needle Knight Letta wakes up with a headache. Without the golden magic forcing her to obey, she has to look at the cold facts. She must stare at the bloody history of Mikilla and decide if she wants to follow him based on her own free will. She reaches a dark conclusion. She decides to stay loyal, but she points her sword at anyone she suspects might betray the cause. She transforms into a dangerous hunter. She stalks her former friends and cuts them down to protect Mikilla. She did not become a villain. Instead, she became brutally honest. When you remove the comforting blanket of magic mind control, raw loyalty morphs into a paranoid, bloody weapon. quiet, frail Tialayi chased Saint Trina deep into the land of shadow. He lives his life obsessed with her sweet purple poison. At the end of his long road, Tialayi uncovers a crushing secret. He learns that Saint Trina is merely a discarded piece of Mikilla. He realizes Mikilla uses love as a heavy chain to control the minds of his servants. Tialayi holds all the facts in his hands. He clearly sees the puppet strings attached to his own heart. In response, he closes his eyes and keeps drinking the poison. He refuses to abandon the warm feeling Saint Trina gave him. He knows Mikilla engineered his devotion in a laboratory. He knows the romance is fake. He decides the warmth in his chest feels real enough to die for. You can view his stubborn choice as a beautiful display of human endurance, or you can view it as the saddest tragedy on the map. The history of the realm of shadow leaves the judgment up to you. Tialayi refuses to let the ugly truth ruin his beautiful dream. Mikilla built a massive plan to claim a divine crown. He required 2 specific tools to open the heavy gates of divinity. First, he needed a strong soul to anchor his magic. To get one, he sent his sister Melania to slaughter General Radon, leading to a war that rotted Khalid and ultimately failed to kill the general until you arrived at the festival. Second, he needed to make a heavy sacrifice at the divine gate. Mikilla possessed a brilliant mind and centuries of free time to organize his pieces. The chilling horror of Mikilla's ascension stems from what he was willing to pay. To cross the threshold into godhood, he sacrificed his own flesh. He scattered his body, his eye, his heart, and his capacity for love, Saint Trina herself, across the land of shadow. Then, to grant Radon a physical anchor, he desecrated the corpse of his half-brother Moog, twisting the defiled remains into a meat suit for a new lord. Mikilla brought his most devoted followers to the stairs, guided your sword directly to the divine gate, and abandoned everything that made him human. The friendliest god in the royal family decided to build a peaceful world by stealing General Radon's soul, brainwashing his most loyal knights, mutilating his brother's corpse, and abandoning his own heart. Good intentions rarely wash the blood off a king's hands. When the dust settles over the divine gate, nobody steps forward to explain exactly who Mikilla truly was. The ruins of Anir Illim hold dozens of clues pointing in wildly different directions. Mikilla behaved as the kindest prince in Lanedell. He also manufactured fake love to brainwash his guards. He genuinely cried for the sick and poor. He also threw away his own capacity for love without a second thought. He desperately wanted to build a world without war. He built that world using the same bloody swords as Queen Marika. All these conflicting facts exist at the same time. The land of shadow refuses to hand you a simple answer. The unsettling aspect of walking across these ruined fields is not the giant dragons or the rotting dogs. The true horror stems from watching powerful people cause immense pain while genuinely believing they are saving the world. The history books refuse to sort the kings into neat boxes of good and evil. Mikilla stands as the ultimate example of a smiling tyrant, but he holds a lot of company. The foundation of the Golden Order consists of well-meaning rulers making brutal choices. The giant Scadutree dominates the sky of the Land of Shadow, acting as a dark twin to the glowing Erdtree. Unlike the shining Erdtree that absorbs and recycles bright souls, the Scadutree offers no holy power. It functions as a heavy container for pain. The black wood drinks up the suffering of the entire region. The screams of the burning hornscent, the blood of Mesmer's crusades, and the tears of families who died without the Erdtree to guide their souls, all flow into its roots. The Scadutree swallows all this misery and holds it tight. When you pick up Scadutree fragments from the fields, you are picking up hardened pieces of this violent history. You chew on the black splinters to increase your physical strength. You survive the brutal fights of the Land of Shadow by actively eating the condensed grief of a slaughtered civilization. The dark branches hang heavy because they carry the weight of every crime the Golden Order refused to acknowledge. The pain piled up for centuries, and the Scadutree bears the entire load. A dark veil hides an entire landmass from the glowing light of the Erdtree. Queen Marika used the Land of Shadow as a dumping ground for her worst mistakes. She shipped Mesmer here to burn the Hornscent towns to ash, and then she locked him in the dark so nobody could see his bloody hands. Queen Marika hid all the ugly evidence of her rise to power in the realm of shadow. She built her golden kingdom on a foundation of slaughter, and she hid the bones. The Scadutree stands in the center of the map. It drops a heavy black shadow because dark shadows fall on things the light refuses to touch. This hidden realm serves as the suppressed memory of the Golden Order. Queen Marika treated the land like a locked basement. She shoved all her failures down the stairs and threw away the key. Every burned village in the Land of Shadow exists. Queen Marika made a calculated choice to erase them from the history books. Leyndell looks so peaceful and perfect because Queen Marika forced everyone to forget the oceans of blood spilled to build it. The bitter Hornscent warrior who walks the roads of the Land of Shadow with you never finds a happy ending. He carries the heavy ghosts of his murdered family on his back. He understands that you, a tarnished guided by golden light, act as a blunt weapon for the same empire that burned his home. The Hornscent helps you fight the bosses anyway. He swings his sword beside you because he needs to survive, and pragmatism keeps a man breathing longer than blind rage. He never finds peace. The long journey offers no healing for his broken heart. The adventure ends with him sitting by the roadside, carrying the same bitter anger he started with. He receives no apology from Queen Marika. Queen Marika buried her debts so far in the land of shadow that nobody can ever pay them back. The history of the land of shadow refuses to fix his sadness. It merely forces you to watch him suffer. Leaving his wounds open makes the brutal reality of the hidden lands feel much more authentic. At last, the ruined roads of the lands between constantly force you to look at a singular question. You walk past dead gods, buried cities, hanging bodies, and clay pots filled with screaming flesh. The lands between does not ask you to judge good and evil. The journey asks if the people holding the swords actually understand the damage they cause. Does Queen Renala comprehend how her amber egg slowly melts the minds of her crawling scholars at Raya Lucaria? Does Mikilla realize his charming magic strips the humanity from his closest friends in the land of shadow? Does Queen Marika truly grasp the ocean of blood required to execute the Golden Order's grand design? Do you, the tarnished holding a heavy sword, understand the toll required to clear a path to the Elden Throne? The lands between offers no answers. The shattered world lays the evidence at your feet. It points to the screaming skulls trapped in the god devouring serpent's belly, the fake stars painted on the ceiling of Nokron, the red bloodstains pooling on the floors of Stormvale Castle, and the wandering mausoleums ringing bells for demigods who will never wake up. The journey forces you to stare at this pile of misery and asks if you possess the stomach to keep walking. Every tarnished who claims the Elden Throne answers that question by pushing open the final doors. Whether any of us made the right choice remains a secret the dying world will never tell. So close your eyes. There will be many nights ahead to think about how you would answer that question. In the meantime, lie down, stay close to the warmth of the fire, and sleep well.